Welcome to Speak on Stage. I'm joined by the amazing Simon Alexander Ong, who you may know from writing an incredible book which has just been a bestseller around the world called Energize. He's in Dubai, and it made sense to catch up after we've been talking for so long online and in WhatsApp and so on, to discover exactly what makes him so successful and also what he shares that make a big difference to you. So stick around, find out what can help you grow your business, your life, and energize yourself to the next level on Speak on Stage. Welcome to Speak on Stage with davecrane, the podcast where we unpack the art and science of public speaking to help you command the stage with confidence and authority. I'm your host, davecrane, and as a seasoned speaker, coach, and entertainer, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals like you to unlock their true potential on stage all around the world. Each week, we'll bring you candid conversations with industry experts, successful speakers, and thought leaders, delving into proven strategies, practical tips, and personal anecdotes to empower you to become a captivating communicator. So whether you're a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills, or a beginner taking your first steps onto the stage, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering the craft of public speaking. So grab your notepad, open your mind, and get ready to amplify your impact as we embark on this journey together. Welcome to Speak on Stage with davecrane. Together, let's jump and grow wings on the way down. Simon, pleasure having you here.
Likewise, David. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Right, got to call me Dave. Tell what you want.
Dave.
If you call me David Crane, that's the guy who wrote Friends.
Oh.
And so he gets a lot of my press. I remember being booked for an event. They called me up, an agency. Dave, we want to book you for an event in Abu Dhabi. I went, great, the company is called for you. So I sent all my details through, and we went, oh no, they wanted the guy who wrote Friends, not you. So they cancelled it. So
Dave
Crane. So you've been in Dubai many times as well, haven't you? So
yeah, this is my fourth time actually.
And what's your thoughts of the place?
I love it. There's a certain energy about this place. There's like this can-do attitude, this focus on being better, bolder, stronger. Every time I come back, there's something new that's just been constructed, or some new addition to a place I went to before. It just keeps you on your feet.
That's fantastic. You're absolutely right. One of the things I find fascinating about this place is you never know what's coming next, but you can guarantee it's a world leader in what they decide it's going to be, because the whole world is focusing on Dubai in this part of the world and saying that if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in Dubai, and they're normally right.
Yeah, and I think it's that forward thinking. It's having a vision and challenging yourself to do something different. And a lot of governments around the world aren't of that mindset. And I love this mindset here, where it's like, well, what can we do, and how can we do it in a way that is the best in the world?
So for people watching the show now, and they're wondering what makes you tick, who is Simon Alexander Ong, and how did you get to the position where you are now as a best-selling author and as a speaker and somebody who's talking to some of the best thinkers on the planet?
Yeah.
What was your journey that drives you to be able to be in that position?
So I grew up with this mistaken belief that success was driven by my job title. Be a banker, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an accountant. And so when I graduated from college, I started in the financial services sector at what was probably the worst possible time, the middle of 2007, which was a year before the global financial crisis swept across the planet. And the company that I started with, just to make things a little interesting, was Lehman Brothers. 14 months after I joined, it fell into bankruptcy.
Wow.
And even though I spent nearly 10 years in and out of the industry, so in and out of jobs within the same industry, because that was all I knew. My background was in finance, I worked in finance, all I knew was finance. It kick-started the longest journey that we humans make, which are the inches from our heads to our hearts. And so I started asking myself some important questions. Some of these questions included the likes of, what did success mean to me, and what sort of impact did I want to have in the world? Now, even though I didn't have a full picture of the answers to that, I started just to write down everything I was curious about. And I realized I didn't want to be where some people in the finance industry were in decades to come.
Makes perfect sense.
I didn't want to be there. And so I started to follow my curiosities, and I landed on this idea of coaching. I said to myself, that's something I think I can do. I can impact somebody's life by guiding them, helping them, supporting them to going through some sort of transformation. And if you had said to me at the beginning of quitting the financial industry and starting my first business, if I could create a successful company just doing one-to-one coaching, I would say, great, I'll take it. But the beauty of pursuing what you're passionate about is it begins to open other paths that you can never imagine when you first start. So I started doing one-to-one coaching, and then suddenly I was invited to speaking, and then media interviews, podcast interviews, in the book deal, and all the other stuff that has come since. And that's because when you do what you enjoy, when you do it in a way that makes you you, when there's something about the way you do it that gets people's attention, people want to do other stuff with you. They want to collaborate with you on other projects. And that's what led me to do a lot of things I now get to do today.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you decided to step into that role of being a coach and the thing started to take off, the challenge must have been, what version of myself do I give to this role? Because there's your normal self, your private self, your family self, there's a public self. You need to hold a little bit back than just share it with the world, because you've got your family life and stuff as well. But everybody needs to know that you're authentic. How do you manage to balance that properly?
You don't know when you start, because a lot of this stuff you learn on the job. So when I started, it was just purely, how do I add value to someone's life? And that can be different for each of us. So I was always being focused on what is it I could add of value, whether it's in a conversation, in a coaching session, whether I met two people who wanted the thing that the other person could offer. How can I connect these people together? And what I realized is the more I added value into people's lives, the more people wanted to spend time with me. They're like, oh, Simon just really added value to my life. I didn't expect it. Is he expecting something to know? I just wanted to keep adding value to people's lives, because I realized in order to build a coaching practice, you have to give people an experience of your coaching, and then you have to come from a place of service. Now, as I got into the speaking side, that's when I got a bit more vulnerable, because now I'm producing content, which is very different to coaching, because coaching is quite private. It's one-on-one, nobody else gets to see what's going on in the session.
Exactly.
But once you move into the public arena, which is speaking, content creation, everything else that comes with putting yourself out there, for me it was more about the vulnerability. I wanted to tell people that it's not all roses all the time, and that there is a reality to this journey. And so I wanted to go in with humility, to tell people that I'm just like you. You know, I was in a job, I was pursuing something that didn't make me fulfilled, but you can do this as well. But you just have to be intentional, you have to adopt some habits that you may not have had before, and then you have to ask yourself what you want out of life, and then take small steps. And I always tell people that you are going to fail. There's no point sugarcoating. You will fail. It's true. You will have setbacks. You will question why you're doing it, and you will feel like you're going to give up. Now, once you are clear on that, the question then becomes, how am I going to prepare myself mentally to deal with that? So, because I was so focused on just talking about the truths that I've experienced and my journey in a very vulnerable but open way, I found very quickly people resonated with that. It wasn't like, you can do it, just go out, do it, and you'll be successful. It doesn't give you any real information. I mean, it's hard to relate to that. Easy to say that when you're at the other side, but what are some real things I can do now? And so I really want to speak to that, because I think it's that transition from doing one thing you've done for so long to something you've never done before. How does that work in practice? And on the outside, it looks quite easy. Oh, this person quit the job, started a business, is doing well. But what people don't see is what goes on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
It's in here. It's the constant questioning of ourselves. It's, do I actually know I'm going to make it? Do I know I'm going to get paid next year? This stuff nobody sees. And so it's really...
You still feel that?
I still do, yes. Because we're human, which means we all have fears and we all have challenges. Now, agreed, the fears and challenges will be different. You move to a different level, there'll be different fears and challenges. So to give an example, when I first started, my challenge was, how am I going to get paid? How do I get my clients? How do I build awareness about what I do? Now, as I've kind of grown beyond that, the new challenges become, how do I hire the right talent? How do I work with the right partners? Challenges still, but just a different level. So you're always going to have them, they just evolve with you.
How did you find your audience? Because one of the biggest challenges when you start as a speaker or as an author is you want people to find you, but often you have to know that it's going to resonate with a certain type of person. So who is your avatar, or what avatars do you normally relate to? And did that happen automatically, or did you have to work extra hard to make that reality?
You just have to put yourself out there. When you first start, you only know who your audience is by testing different audiences. Because you might have a thesis. I think my message resonates with this audience. But what if it doesn't? You don't know until you try. So at the beginning, and I can't remember who said it, but somebody summed up the journey really well. They said at the beginning of every entrepreneurial journey, you have to say yes to nearly everything. And then once you've built yourself up, you have to say no to nearly everything. And the reason is because at the beginning, you don't know your right audience yet. You can't, because you're a novice, you've just started. So you say yes to everything as much as you can, so you can test, and then you learn from the feedback. It didn't resonate. If it didn't resonate, why? What could be done different? Try a different audience. Is it resonating? Why not? And then you yourself also start to learn, who do I enjoy working with? Who are the clients I enjoy working with? Who are the groups I enjoy working with? And then as you know, you refine, and then you can start to work more on the niche that you want to operate in.
There's a tsunami that's hitting the world right now called AI.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk said that in the future, unless you want to work, you don't have to, because it's going to wipe out almost every job. Now, that's easy to say for Elon Musk, and you never have to work again. For everybody else, we have to bring in a living. But if everything's going to disappear, that makes it really challenging. When AI hits everybody, they're going to have to reinvent themselves, step up, use AI, and so on. But there's a lot of resistance to that. When you position yourself, do you bring AI in? Have you had AI thoughts and worries from people, or are we too busy worrying about its normal day-to-day life before they worry about what AI is going to do?
Sure, well, I've actually been embracing a lot of AI. So I did a talk here in Dubai yesterday, and what I did is I showed to the audience how constraints breed creativity. So one of my constraints, for example, is I only speak English. So I don't speak any other language.
You're British, it's standard.
Standard, right? So I only speak English. Now that's my constraint. Now I can either accept it, or I can embrace a bit of creativity to think different. So what I looked at is not my lack of resources, but how could I be resourceful? And so I used AI to take my content and translate it into over 12 languages. And the one that I showed the audience in this talk I did yesterday was me speaking something with subtitles in fluent Hindi. And the audience were aghast, because if they understood Hindi, they said, Simon, one person said to me at the end, you speak more fluent Hindi than my dad. And the AI lip synced my lips to the pronunciation of all the Hindi words. And so I've embraced AI as a way to be better and reach new audiences. Now, this happens throughout history. You're always going to go through cycles. So if you think about when the internet first came out, when social media first came out, there are always going to be these moments in history where something that we cannot comprehend gets unleashed into the world. And you either embrace it or you fear it. And there are valid reasons for both sides. But for me, if it's going to happen anyway, why fight it? See it as a teammate. See it as someone you can collaborate with. See that AI is one of your team. So I do a lot of video editing as well. Now, if I didn't use AI, I would probably have to have 3 or 4 people doing the editing. One person would have to go through my content, clean it out, cut the pauses, put the B-roll in, divide it all up. Now that could take hours for someone sitting there to do. But with AI, there are tools where I just put it onto my editor and it'll cut all the pauses out straight away, and it'll do all the filler in terms of the content, the B-roll, and divide into chapters and create a beginning and an end. And it can do that within 10 minutes. Now, that saves me so much more time to focus on higher level creative thinking. So what we want to look at is, yes, there are going to be some reasons to fear it. You know, there are a lot of reasons I've talked about in the past. Or we can begin to embrace and leverage the resources it can give us to do a lot more things. And I think what's interesting is AI is going to divide the world into 2 camps. You are going to have hyper creators, because we're leveraging AI to create at a pace like never before. Because if suddenly AI does a lot more work for you in terms of the content, editing and production, it makes it easier for you to churn out more content. But on the other side, you're going to have hyper consumers. Because there's so much content being put out there, people who aren't creating are just going to be stuck consuming content on their phone for all hours of the day.
It's going to be a curious balance into how much of that stuff's going to go out. But also, at the same time, if you look at the shift that's happened in the movie industry towards the TV industry, there was a shift. All the best stuff's on TV. It's not in the movie cinemas anymore, which is why the box offices have dropped. But people are still consuming the content and loving it, and the industry is still growing. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. But there will, one of the things I found fascinating was the thought this morning is about reverse mentoring, about the younger generation teaching the older generation how to use these kind of skills. And that's something that hasn't really grown into an industry yet. But as more and more 50-year-olds start finding themselves unemployed and unemployable because of the nature of bringing somebody into the organisation when you know they're going to be more expensive in insurance and they might not stay as long and they're not going to embed themselves into the company, there's a lot to be said for that younger generation to be able to teach new skills to people. Do you think that they're ready to do it, or do you think that they need a little bit more encouragement? The reason I say that is because you and I are of a slightly older age, and so with the family, we know we have to go to work. When I was younger, I couldn't care less about any of that stuff, and so the idea of having a sensible job and doing stuff kind of like was of no interest to me. But I think that the world needs to have that kind of blending of people stepping into new roles. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a big fan for reverse mentoring. The reason I say that is because I've had a mentor who is 65 years old, and I've had a mentor who is 19 years old. Now, what I learned from him is going to be very different. The 65-year-old mentor can teach me how to take my speaking more internationally, because his experience is very international. He's spoken in very different countries. He can also tell me how to do work with corporates, because that's his experience. The 19-year-old can't tell me that information, but the 90-year-old can tell me how to go about content creation, how to understand the platforms, how to have strategies to get my content out to more people. So when you have a variety of mentors, regardless of age, that difference in perspectives and experience can really help you in terms of your business development, but also in terms of your career progression.
Just a quick one, if you love what I do and want to work with me, go to the VIP mentoring site and get yourself registered. Whatever it is you want to do, this is a QR code, or go to www.speakonstage.com/summervip/ all the details are there. I'm waiting for you. One-to-one exclusive sessions to build your signature product. What is it? Find out, take a look, work with you soon. That's it. Back to the podcast. Now, when you're traveling around the world and you've got family at home, the pressure is, it's great to travel, but at the same time you want to bring your family with you, but you can't concentrate on things when your family's. It's a difficult balancing act, isn't it, to travel and to also stay at home. How do you get your head through that?
If I'm traveling for a week or less, I go by myself. If it's a week or more, they come with me. That's how I go about it. So here in Dubai, I'm here for just under a week, so it's just me. And because it's just me, I've got to talk, but I've also focused on booking meetings with people like yourself, podcast hosts, and just to catch up with friends I have here, so I can maximize the time I have in the city. Now, when I go to Singapore in a couple of months, my family coming with me because we're going for 2 weeks. So I'm not just in Singapore, we're going to Singapore, I do my talk in Singapore, and then we go to Bali for family holiday. So for me, I'll bring them with this over a week, because then once I've done my event, I can spend some time with them.
Now, as a man of colour, as indeed you are, we've got a very divisive world where the world kind of embraces change and people who are different probably better than ever before. But at the same time, there are some guardrails put into what you can do when you put yourself out there. There's a lot that's done by trolls, probably not more than before, but more visible than before. But I do feel that we are going in a good direction. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you being diverse, it's never been a better time to be diverse in general, because I've got a lot more opportunities than I think I would have got in the past. You know, just look at organizations. You have now diverse committees, you have inclusion committees. DEI is a big buzzword in the corporate world. A lot more people understanding that in order to think different, you have to have diverse inputs into your mind. So I think there's so much more opportunities today than there ever was, being someone from an ethnic minority. However, as you say, it doesn't mean to say racism and extreme views on someone who's different doesn't exist anymore. It still does. And trolls, you mentioned the word just now, you get it as part of the game of putting yourself out there.
When we talk about this subject, do you feel that part of your mission is to break down those barriers, or do you feel it's going to happen, I'll just carry on doing what I'm doing? The reason I say it is because for me it's very important that I do put myself in the firing line to break down barriers and get other people to say, actually, you know what, I'd never thought of it like that, but I'm interested now because I didn't think I could work with somebody like Dave. So I think for me it's important, but for me it's partly because I've got a family, I'm older, and I don't care what people think of me.
I think it's about being an example, because I'll tell you what happened recently. So when I put the book together, my sole focus was to bring value to the readers, share my experience, share my insights, share the lessons I've learned, and help enrich their lives. What I didn't expect, and it wasn't in my head when I wrote the book, was the reaction from the Chinese community. When I put it out there, I had so many messages in my DMs and my emails saying, Simon, it's so refreshing to see someone from a Chinese origin have a book in the self-help section of a Waterstones bookshop. And that for me got me thinking, actually, I'm in a rare position where so many in my culture cannot relate to someone from their culture being on a stage, writing a book, traveling the world and speaking to audiences. There's not many of us to do it. And it made me realize, actually, I'm in a fortunate position to be that example. Because when I grew up as a young Chinese kid, the stereotype was the only people we could look up to from our culture were martial artists. It was people that did kung fu and karate and so on. That was the stereotype. But in today's world, what's amazing is you have Chinese people acting, directing, speaking, writing. That diversity, I think, is important because it shows the next generation that you don't have to follow one path. You can try something different and you can succeed.
But what about you individually with this? And the reason I ask the question is because I went to visit my family in the West Indies, where my mum's from, and I've expected everyone to embrace me and say, you're one of us. And I realised that I wasn't one of them. And I realised that I wasn't as proud as I am to be Britain. I watch England, I'm going to watch them tonight and so on. I love cheering when we win or lose or whatever. But I found I had to get used to just being my own person, whatever that means. And people embrace the fact that you are very much your own person.
You have to.
How do you find that? Because that is a bit of a challenge, because it's not like you suddenly arriving and everyone's just like you. You have to go out there and fly the flag, and people can rally under it but bring their own version of who they are under it. But it's a very lonely decision that you have to make, to be out there front and centre and carry your own personal ethnicity into where you go.
It is because there's not many people doing it. So naturally by that setup, it is going to be a bit lonely. But at the same time, what's most important is, are you living a life true to yourself? Are you doing it in the way that you want to do it? That's what's most important. Because, it's been cited a lot, but Bronnie Ware's book, The Regrets of the Dying, the number one regret from people who get to the end of their life is, I wished I lived a life more true to myself than a life for other people. Now, focus on you first, because you can't pour from an empty cup. Focus on you, and then with the energy you've then built up, then go out and do all the other stuff you want to do. But if you're not in a good place, if you haven't worked on you first, how can you expect to have all that impact you desire?
It's fascinating you bring that up, because I remember reading an article about the number one regret of people who die, according to care workers, and they all say, I thought I'd have more time. Which is a very sobering thought, because procrastination is built in for many people. But you travel around the world, same as I do, you produce stuff, content, you put it out, you shift it, people embrace it or don't embrace it, and you keep churning out. If anything, I feel like there's not enough time anyway, but I think it's also important to pace yourself so it passes at the time that you feel comfortable doing it, because you can burn out if you don't pace it properly.
And this is the thing, it's that consistency always beats intensity. So when you think about it, it's far better to find your own consistent rhythm than to fall into the trap of following someone else's consistent rhythm. So if somebody's posting content every day, you don't have to do that. You just have to work out what is your consistency. It could be once a week, once every couple of days, once every 2 weeks, whatever it is. But as long as you have some consistent rhythm, that's what's important.
Do you think everybody should write a book? Or do you think, because here's the thing, so many people who write a book end up with a garage with a box of rotting books in it, because they produced a book that's always been inside them. They didn't realise that nobody actually wanted to read it, but they wanted to produce it. But I do believe that the world needs more authors. I do believe the world needs more people sharing even micro stories that can help people to grow. What's your thoughts on that? You've brought out an incredibly successful book,
Sure.
Energize. I'm sure there's more books that are on the way right now.
Yeah.
What do you think, brothers?
I would say there is a book in all of us, but it doesn't automatically mean that book needs to be out in the world. There's a book in all of us, purely because we all have different experiences. We've all different experiences and lessons that we've learned throughout our lifetime. However, the only reason the book should then come out is if you are willing to market it. Because the trap we fall into is everybody would love to write a book. Who doesn't, right? It's an achievement few people get to do. But that's only one part of the game. One part of the game is having a good book. And when you think about book proposals, so much attention is focused on why this book is relevant, why now, and why people can read it. That's all about the book itself. But we don't give enough attention to the business development side of it. How are we going to market it? What's the PR plan? What communities are you going to tap into? Who can you get endorsements from? It's like, you got to think of the book as a product. Now, if you're going to sell a product in your business, you're not going to put it out to market with no marketing behind it. So you really got to think of the business side of a book. And a lot of people, I believe, don't think about that side. They just focus on getting the book out, having written the book, and just patting themselves on the back and I'm done. So, but if you want to really impact people and transform people's lives, you want to get it out to as many people as possible.
I remember speak to guys who had been on Oprah Winfrey, and they said the smart way to go into Oprah Winfrey in the days when Oprah Winfrey was the #1 show in the world was never to go out and talk about your current book, to talk about the next one, even if you hadn't written it yet, because you'd only get one chance to be on Oprah, but you will sell your second book on the knowledge that you have another one coming to an audience that will buy the first one. So with you've got one book out at the moment.
One book out at the moment.
The next one is
in brainstorming at the moment.
As you're brainstorming, what's the process then? Because you want it to be something that relates to your existing audience. You don't want it to be a rehash of the same thing.
Exactly.
But you want it to be something that elevates your own journey and brings people who want more into it. But that's not so easy. It's like a fish looking for water, saying, where's this water everyone's talking about? Sometimes you'd be so close to your own challenges, it's hard to get what the secret sauce is that people are going to really want from your next book.
No, absolutely. And it's just about trusting that what you have to share is going to have an impact. Because like I say, you never know ahead of time if people are going to receive it well. It's like a piece of content. I put out one piece of content, I put a lot of work into editing, and I think that's going to do well. It does okay, and then I put out another piece of content which I haven't really spent much time editing. And I'm like, this is not going to do too well, and it does even better than the one that I spent a lot of time editing. We just don't know. And so I think is when you put a second or third book together, or how many books you're writing, the thing is to write what you're curious about right now. Write what makes you feel alive, because people can read and they feel it through the words. They can feel the energy. It's like if you go home to your family and your parents cook you a nice homemade meal, that tastes so much better than eating a meal from somebody who's doing it just because they've got to cook. Because when your parents put that food together, they're putting it together with love. They're putting it together from the passion they have for giving you good nutrition, a good sustenance. Energy that you put into something can be felt by the person receiving it. And so that's why I think it's most important. Can the reader or the person viewing your work feel the energy you put into it? If they can, they're going to connect with it.
A thought leader who comes out to position themselves nowadays needs to consider a number of different ways of reaching their market. For me, it's been about public speaking, but also omni-channel, so you position your stuff so it's available and visible. It's about creating a brand that people can resonate with, so they understand instantly what your values are and what's in it for them. But it's also, you need to be able to financially make it work, otherwise you'll be putting out content that makes other people rich and you'll be going, I can't sustain this. What other areas would you say are really important for the thought leaders that will grow and exist in the future?
You're right. If you just focus on content, especially beginning, it's not going to pay the bills. All those likes, all those comments, all those shares doesn't pay the bills. So the way you've got to think about building a business as a full leader in today's world is you've got to run two things in parallel. You've got to run your monetization part of the business well. Alongside that, you've got to run the brand building exercises. The brand building exercises in the short term will not pay. This is just purely to build awareness about your work. The monetizing side is what does pay right now. But the thing is as you grow both, eventually the brand building side will help accelerate the monetization. So I'll give you an example. If I look at my journey, my monetizing right at the beginning was the one-to-one coaching. Now, I didn't earn a huge amount at the beginning, but it was enough to keep me going. So I would just do the one-to-one coaching again, get another client. But on the other side, running parallel, I was brand building. I was putting out content on channels like Instagram, on Facebook and LinkedIn, so people became more aware of my work. I began to speak for free. That's brand building because I'm not getting paid yet. And again, that brought people into my ecosystem. Now, as the brand building stuff got bigger and more people knew about my work, of course then I can charge more on the monetization side. And eventually, as both grow, they feed into each other. So I think that's how we've got to think about it. It's not one or the other, but how can we run them parallel?
When did you feel that things had stepped up to a level where you're going, whoa, we're off? Because when we talk about an overnight success, that's usually about 10 years of working really hard to get to that point. When was the point when you turned around and went, actually, this has taken off, I can ride the waves of this thing? Was it the book release? Was it a combination of social media? Was it being booked for more gigs? Was it an agency? What made a big difference?
Well, funny you say 10 years, is because it's now coming up to 8 years since I left employment.
Right.
So that's nearly 10 years.
Yeah.
And you say it looks like an overnight success, but that's nearly 10 years of me being consistent at what I'm doing. And I think it was a multitude of things. So first was I was getting more media exposure. So I was being quoted in magazines and newspapers, and then BBC wanted to interview me, and Sky News did the interview. And I think once those things started to come together, that really brought the credibility higher. So when you were to look at my profile, the fact I'd done BBC News and Sky News, immediately it put me in a very different category than the majority of my peers who were still kind of working behind me. So I think that certainly helped. It gave me that credibility. It was because I found myself speaking at more and more events, and the events got better. So it wasn't just corporates I was doing. Now I was invited to speak at, say, Peter Jones from Dragon's Den's charity events. I was then invited to speak at bigger conferences, festivals. And so that grew my audience into the mainstream. And then on top of that, the book certainly added a fire. Because the book allowed me, and with the help of endorsements from like Ali Abdaal, Simon Sinek, Marshall Goldsmith, and so on, that really helped me to access a far wider audience who had never come across my work before. With the book doing well, and then people recommending it, sharing it, talking about it, that just opened me to an even bigger audience.
So where do you see this going? Because it's like being in a car and it always feels like it's driving at the same pace. But from the outside, people are going, wow, that's a bit fast. Where do you see your journey leading? I know that you certainly don't want to stop the journey, but things are already happening that you want more of, some things you want less of, and there are opportunities that would open up in a way that maybe you hadn't considered when you first started. What would be your, oh my goodness, this is it, I've hit the levels where I can just look at the top of the mountain, look down, and then cherry pick what I want to have?
I think three things for me would create an ideal lifestyle. One, far more speaking. I started to speak a lot more internationally post the book coming out. I love speaking, love going to the stage, connecting with an audience and adding value that way. So if I can build on that more, amazing. Second is YouTube. YouTube's something I've just started this year with much greater intention. So with that growing, that adds a great passive income stream with the ad revenue, with sponsorship and so on. And the third, it's a bit more of a medium-term thing, is TV and film. Kind of taking my work and distributing it through TV and media platforms.
And when you're looking at that, we've got an incredible world now where in the old days, younger people certainly weren't that interested if it wasn't a soap opera or a movie or something. But people now live and breathe great ways of thinking, personal development, anything that gives them an advantage over where they were the day before. So it's a great time to be influencing people, not just saying, look at me, I'm great, this is what I had for my dinner, but getting people to get from A to B faster and saving them time, making them more money, and giving them a happier life. With that, we've now got a currency which is well-being. I mean, it didn't have that before the pandemic. We just didn't, people didn't consider it. If people wanted to feel better, they went shopping, and they bought shoes and got drunk and stuff like that. But it's now just starting to become a currency that people say, you know what, I want some more well-being, I want some more happiness. How are you finding that impacts you in your business model?
Important. The first chapter of my book is called Invest in Your Health for a reason, because health is the first wealth. If you're healthy, you're going to have lots of hopes, dreams and goals. If you're sick, you only have one. And so if you do not have a good baseline of good health, so when I say good health, I mean getting sufficient rest, moving your body on a regular basis, and feeding your body right. Unless you have a good baseline, other stuff becomes a lot harder. Once you've got a great baseline of energy, you can then focus on the other areas of well-being, mental energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy. But you can't make those things a priority unless you've got good health. Because if you're exhausted and tired every day, I mean, how are you going to go into something with the best intention? You can't. It's like starting a 100-meter race 10 meters behind the starting line. However the day turns out, you're always going to feel like you're behind.
But that's talking about physical wealth and physical health. What about the mental side, which is harder to pinpoint the impact it makes on people's lives, but that drives, even your physicality comes from your ability to feel better about yourself. Absolutely. And that was always seen as, oh yeah, whatever. I mean, typically for men, this is a big challenge for men, to talk about a man who has a problem. It makes him look weak. But now we've got more and more people turning around saying, you know what, I don't know what to do, and I don't want to go for a drink, and I don't want to watch sports, and I don't want to buck up my ideas and pretend there's not a problem there. But there's still a stigma for men. The highest amount of suicides, 80% of them are male. So mental health is a big area, but it still hasn't become a currency as much as it needs to. And what needs to happen?
And this is why there's 4 dimensions of energy. I touched on physical energy, but the other areas are mental, emotional, spiritual. Mental energy is about this. You know, how do you build that mindset, and how do you focus on what matters? Emotional energy is all about relationships with yourself first, and then with the people around you. And spiritual energy is all about meaning and purpose. You know, you can be exhausted not because you are physically doing too much, but because you're doing too little of the things that bring you joy, and you're running someone else's race. That feeling you get on a Sunday evening or Monday morning before you go to the office, that physical tension in your stomach, that's because you're low in spiritual energy. You're going against who you are. You're not doing work that brings out your potential. And so that manifests itself in physical tension, physical stress. That's when you're low in spiritual energy. Emotional energy means the relationship with yourself isn't healthy. Chances are it's because there's nobody to speak to about it. You just keep it inside. And as you said, it's what happens with a lot of men. We keep it inside thinking we alone can deal with it. The fact is we can't. We never get to the top alone. So how do you either talk to someone about it or find an outlet where you can download what's in here in a healthy way?
But that's still going to be a problem, because most men don't even know that they've got that particular problem. And when they do realize that there's an issue, who do they go to talk about it? It looks like weakness amongst your friends. It looks like you're not that strong guy amongst your partner. And your work, generally, the first thing that would go through most bosses is, oh, we're going to have a problem here. Let's go into HR and just see if we can deal with it. If it continues, maybe we need to find somebody else to fill that role. So we keep it tucked inside, waiting to explode. So when you talk about those 4 different areas, I think you're absolutely right. I think spirituality is something that's really not understood by most people. It's not just about your relationship with a higher power, whatever that higher power is. It's your relationship with yourself and what's going on and what's growing. And I do believe, for instance, when somebody wins the Olympics, the first thing they do is tend to thank God. And it's not necessarily that they believe in God. It's when they have an injury and they know they shouldn't be training, they believe in a higher power that gets them back in to do stuff. That higher power thing has been fudged a little bit now as to what it is, because it gets monetized and because it's forever it's used. Let's not go down that particular route that I'm heading down now, but it still leaves a challenge for men and many women as well to say, what is my purpose? How do I get there? And when I look at people like Dave and Simon and all these decision makers who seem to have it easy, I don't have it that easy, and I feel a loser. And that's a real challenge for many people, especially on social media. You only ever see the success stories. You don't see what happens behind the scenes. You know, when we got noise going on in a restaurant or a hotel and we're trying to make a recording, there's so many things that people don't see. What would your advice be about that whole journey to keep yourself moving and being able to keep going?
There's a couple of things in response to what you shared. Number one, this is why you cannot have self-development without self-awareness. The first step is being self-aware. Now what that means is understanding yourself. I mean, how many of us really understand who we are? Once you understand who you are, you understand your strengths and weaknesses. The next easiest step, if you're not comfortable talking about it to someone yet, because especially if you're just starting on this journey, is journaling. write down your thoughts onto paper. It's the simplest step you can take. Because when you download your thoughts onto paper, first of all, your mind becomes a lot lighter because you're putting it onto paper. Second, you can make sense of your thoughts. Because when you're putting your thoughts onto paper the traditional way, so not like on an iPad or smartphone, but like pen to paper, it forces you to slow down and to just evaluate your thoughts. Now, when you touch on purpose, for me, the way I think about it is we tend to use it as an excuse to not do work. I'm not going to do this because I don't know what my purpose is yet. I'm going to start that once I know my purpose. The reality is you don't wake up one morning and go, Eureka, I know what my purpose is. I know what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life. It doesn't happen that way. The reality is you get given clues and insights, and then it's up to you to follow them. And as you take action, you get clarity. As you take action, the next step unravels. And then as you explore those curiosities, you follow the signs the universe sends your way, eventually you find what you were meant to do. I didn't land on coaching straight away on my first go. I tried different things that never worked out. And then eventually I got into coaching. But if I didn't do those things that failed along the way, I probably wouldn't have got to coaching.
Sorry to interrupt your podcast, just a quick one. If you've watched what I've done for the last couple of years and thought to yourself, I wonder what Dave could do for me, now's your chance to find out. Whether it's growing your personal brand, speaking on stages around the world and getting paid while traveling for free, or maybe you want a podcast, or maybe you want to write a book, or creating followers and fans, or having retreats or an online course, or maybe starting your side hustle. Whatever it is, we can create something that's perfect for you, your own signature product. So what do? Well, very simply, all you need to do is register at this QR code or go to www.speakonstage.com/summervip/ and then register. Once confirmed, you get sent details of how we can book to work together. 2 sessions with a load of incredible content to raise your game. You will also be able to be incredible on LinkedIn, get over imposter syndrome, create messaging that your clients will love and buy into. You'll be able to create your personal brand and also become a guest on other people's podcasts and more. What more could you possibly want? Just me and you working together, having a ton of fun and getting you to where you need to be. The world is changing more rapidly than ever before, and I want you to be positioned as the best that you can be. So all you have to do is go to this, register, and then let's help you jump and grow wings on the way down. That's it. Back to the podcast. There's a fascinating thing that people talk about how to run a marathon. You don't have to run 26 miles. You just put one foot in front of the other and repeat. And eventually you'll get there at whatever speed you're going to go. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's about starting the journey, being aware of where you're going. And I think it's really about enjoying the trip, enjoying the adventure. If you get there straight away, for instance, the most fascinating story would be how somebody went from 0 to being a millionaire rather than being a millionaire to a billionaire. Who cares? That's not what everyone else is going to do. But how did you make those decisions? How did you last during the quiet and challenging times? I think that's the adventure we should all be looking for in our lives, wherever it takes us, until one day it says stop and people say, right, that's it. How much did you enjoy? You should enjoy it every single day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If the journey is fun, it's going to be not only more enjoyable, but you're going to be more productive. If you can ask yourself, what would this process look like if it were more fun? What would it look like if it was more exciting? And if you can design it in a way that fits those boxes, you're going to move far quicker than anyone else in the same position as you. But too many are focused on the end. The irony is there is no end. Because if you're focused on improvement, you're always a work in progress. Even when you get to your old age, you're still a work in progress because there's another day to come, which means there's more to learn. But if you think there's an end and you put all of your emotional well-being to that destination, what does that mean you are right now? Anxious, depressed, living a life with a scenario that may or may not happen, and then you're never living in the present. And you end up living this tragic scenario of living as if you're never going to die and then die having never really lived. So yes, have an idea of what you want, but then focus on the present. Say to yourself, what one thing can I do today that will have the biggest impact on all areas of my life? Do that one thing today, and then tomorrow ask yourself the same question. What one thing today will have the biggest impact? And in a year from now, that is 365 steps forward. I mean, just imagine what you could do. Now, I'm not saying it's going to compound in a straight line, but the thing is, at least you're going to have more experience and greater clarity.
And you'll know you've lived a life.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I know that you've got lots to do in Dubai, and be back here again, and hopefully in the future we'll get a chance to share a stage together and share those ideas that we've gone through today with a much bigger audience, and we can see the reflection in their faces as they go, that made sense to me.
Indeed.
Simon Alexander, real pleasure having you here on Speak on Stage, and we look forward to more sessions with more amazing speakers. Make sure you subscribe, and of course get his book, get his podcast, watch his YouTube channel, and make sure you follow his journey. One of the most exciting speakers on the market, Simon Alexander Ong. And remember to jump and grow wings on the way down. I'll see you soon on the next episode of Speak on Stage. Thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of Speak on Stage with Dave Crane. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring and packed with valuable insights to help you to amplify your presence on stage too. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more aspiring speakers just like yourself. Remember, the stage is your platform to shine, and with the right tools and mindset, you can captivate any audience anywhere. So keep honing your craft, refining your message, and never shy away from the spotlight. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll dive even deeper into the world of public speaking and performance. Until then, keep speaking, keep shining, and keep making an impact. This is Dave Crane signing off. See you next time on Speak on Stage.